Love Darts In by Historical Kitten. Chapter 1 Of Snakes and Somus. Jedadiah Strongsmith finished his glass of beer, slapping the men next to him on their shoulders. Okay, boys, old Jedadiah's heading out. The town was settled, which meant it was time to meet up with his best friend. Jedadiah walked outside and heard a familiar commotion. Those were awfully realistic drills from Octavius. Fire! There was a faint whistling in the air next door. Arrows. Jedadiah was already in motion. That wasn't a drill. That there was an actual fight. Boys, our allies need help. You ready to ride? There were a lot of yee-haws and shouts as the cowboys started to assemble. Normally, Jed would have stayed with them, leading them into battle. But then he heard screaming and what sounded like loud hissing. What in tarnation was over there? That's when the true leader of the cowboys, mayor or no mayor, was running. I'm coming, Aki! Octavius was a wily enemy, more than capable of taking care of himself. But when the Roman general was in danger, Jedadiah was going to be there. Period. The blonde cowboy stopped for a moment when he reached Rome. The Mayans had attacked again, but it was the large snake also on the diorama that gave him pause. It was a slender serpent, with greenish-yellow scales covered in heavy bands of dark green. It lashed its tail, exposing a grayish-yellow belly, and knocking down an entire row of battling Roman and Mayan warriors. At least it attacked indiscriminately. In the middle of it all was Octavius, commanding his men, sword brandished in a dramatic fashion. Jedadiah let out a small sigh of relief on seeing him safe. Jedadiah hurried to reach his friend. Starting the party without me, Octopus? The scaled serpent struck. A Roman soldier dropped to the ground, crying out, and that was bad enough, but Octavius ran toward the serpent with his sword up, yelling out a challenge. The general attacked the beast, giving his men time to drag away the injured soldier. Jedadiah pulled out his lasso as his friend dodged a strike. Watch out, partner. Jedadiah, the reinforcements are appreciated, my friend. We gonna two-step this beast? Do a little dancing? Jedadiah asked as they moved in tandem, attacking one at a time so it never fully focused on either of them. Yes, let us perform the doozy-do, as you say. Do-si-do, Oct. That is equally as ridiculous, Octavius said, dodging the tail whipping over his head. Have you a liqueus? Lasso, Jedadiah said as he held his up. Yeah. The duo looked at each other and nodded, having done this before. Octavius ran straight for the creature to distract it, while Jedadiah lassoed its snout and jumped aboard. He locked his ankles together under its jaw as it flailed. Yee-haw! Can't unsee old Jedadiah, you ain't no bucking bronco. Octavius jumped up behind him. I thought I might help weigh the head down. The nearest Romans and Americans tossed ropes over the squirming snake until it was finally secure enough for the pair to jump off. Ha ha! Well done! No one can defeat the combined might of the Roman Empire and the United States of... Ow! Octavius looked down. There was a large dart in his arm that he pulled out. Legatus! One of the soldiers cried out. Press the enemy! Demonstrate the wrath of Mars! Octavius ordered. Make certain they retreat. The Romans saluted and left. The Americans headed off for more fun as well. You okay, Ock? Jedadiah asked, taking off his bandana. The brown-haired man had gone pale. Yes. Jed frowned at the slurring, but hurried to tie his bandana around the wound. We better get you to a medical tent. My arm has lost all sensation. Octavius jerked his shoulder to demonstrate, but was evidently unable to convince his arm to move. The Roman general dropped suddenly, and Jedadiah abruptly found himself with a heavy armful. Octavius? Salve, Jedadiah, the Roman said, looking up into the blushing cowboy's face with a tired and drugged smile. Looks like my legs lost feeling too. I found myself desiring Somnus's embrace. Somnus? Jedadiah thought. Who the Sam Hill is that? Could it be someone Octavius was... sparking? Where was he when Octavius was fighting that serpent, then? Octagon, he started out loud. I shall curl upon you like a kitten in a basket and doze, Octavius declared, putting his head against Jedadiah's chest. The cowboy felt his face flush even more. It had to be the exertion from the battle. Lord, how he sounded like Octavius in his own head. Hang on, partner. You're kind of heavy with that tin can on, Jedadiah said as he adjusted his hold, putting one arm around the Roman's middle and lifting him back into an upright position. Then he put one of the brunette's arms around his neck. Come on, Oct, one foot then the other. You remember how to walk. I remember lots of things, Jedadiah. Octavius managed with drugged dignity. First time I saw you, thought you was the Barbarous. And I thought you had a stick up your... Octavius kept going. But a beautiful Barbarous. Now Jedadiah was completely red in the face. Stop John, Tavy, you don't know what you're saying. Perhaps. I've been hit by a poison dart. What's your excuse? Not poison. It's a sedative, that's all. You're gonna be fine, you melodramatic Roman. Which way to a doctor? Carry me to a couch. I shall recline upon your lap and purr. Octavius butted his helmeted head against Jedadiah's shoulder, possibly mimicking a cat rubbing against someone. Ow. Quit it, Toga boy, you ain't a cat, Jedadiah said, eyes scanning the battle around them, watching for any enemies, though it seemed the Mayans were losing the fight. I love kitties, and spending time with you, watching them. Jedadiah sighed. Look, October, we're in a battle, and I shall keep you safe. This I swear, by Jupiter, and... Octavius blinked heavily. Everybody else. A Roman came over. Legatus? He's been darted, Jedadiah explained. He needs a sawbones. A what? The soldier that Jedadiah vaguely recognized. Decimate? Asked, panicked. Apparently being dramatic was a Roman trait. Is he hurt worse elsewhere? Don't get your toga in a knot. I mean a healer. Whatever y'all call him. And the cowboy stopped talking as Octavius's legs went completely out from under him again and he was forced to support all his weight. Can you help? Between them, they got Octavius's armor off, and Jed pulled him into his arms. Lead the way to someplace he can take a siesta. And hey, you! He yelled at a passing archer, who paused. Go get a healer, pronto. Jedadiah had no authority in Rome, but the soldiers did as he bid regardless. Follow me, General Jedadiah. Decibel said. I am Tesserarius Aria Decimus Blandus. Bless you, Jedadiah said, as if the man had sneezed, but the Roman didn't get the joke. Thank you? May you be blessed in your endeavors as well. You may call me Decimus. Jed was being listened to, respected, and given an honorary rank. Perks being close friends with the leader. Octavius put his head against Jedadiah's shoulder. You smell of manliness and horse, he murmured. Really close friends, apparently. Seriously, Aki? Jedadiah hissed back. Lancelot gets hypnotic blue eyes, and I get you smell like a horse. In front of them, Decimus made a noise that sounded suspiciously like a laugh disguised as a cough. Your eyes are swimming pools of gorgeous, forbidden water, like the river Styx. I could swim in them for eternity and never care if I drown. Would you shut your big bazoo, toga boy? Jed asked in an urgent, quiet tone, glancing at Decimus. Not unless you still my lips for me, Octavius replied, looking up into the cowboy's blue eyes. Jedadiah frowned. Got my hands full at the moment. He paused. Maybe Somnus can help. It's a line from a poem I wrote. Most people like poetry. I shall recite you classic verses. No faithfulness in any bond was ever such as has been found on my part. Davy, Jedadiah said, trying to remain calm. His heart was doing a weird shuddering thing in his chest. You're out of your head. But am I in my heart? With that, Octavius finally passed out. Which was probably better for everyone, all told. Chapter 2. Doctors in Doubt. The walk to Octavius's bedroom was a blur. Jedadiah kept looking down at his friend, whose pale face was partially covered by his helmet. The cowboy had passed right by the richly painted walls depicting fake landscapes, focused only on Octavius's stillness. Hold, Decimus had said at one point. Jedadiah had looked down and realized he nearly walked into a large basin. That don't seem like a great place to put a swimming hole, he grumbled. It catches rainwater. Or it would, if there was rain, Decimus explained. Save the tour for after Arky's been checked out by a doc, Jedadiah said. They also look neat, Decimus muttered defensively as they continued. Octavius's chamber wasn't as fancy as Jedadiah had expected. Not that he'd ever imagined the Roman's bedroom specifically. The bed was in a niche in the room, tall, made out of metal, and had a stuffed mattress with a stool needed to climb on it. Its narrowness made the long legs decorated with ivory look even thinner. The whole thing was covered with a thick wool blanket. He headed over, Octavius in his arms. Decimus pulled back the cover and Jedadiah laid his friend down gently. "You're a good friend to him," Decimus said. Jedadiah looked vaguely uncomfortable. "He's a good partner himself. He'd do the same." That is, the legate was recently modernized many Roman laws and practices." Jedadiah looked at the soldier. "Yeah, and?" The Roman shook his head. "Never mind. Do you wish to stay? I'll let the guards know." "You have to lasso me and drag me back to get me out of here, buckaroo," Jedadiah said, although technically he should make sure his own people weren't the worse for wear. "Can you look for one of my men? Will Holloway? Or Thomas Knight if you can't find Will? Just make sure everything's okay and tell him I ain't leaving until I know Octavius will be all right." "As you will." Decimus paused. "Thomas of the Night. Is Tommy the abbreviated name? Occasionally called Troublesome Tom?" "Yeah," Jed said, noting the soldier suddenly looked a little uneasy. "Problem, Kimasabe?" Decimus shook his head and saluted. "I will do as you asked. Watch over the legatus." "I plan on it." Jedadiah waited for the soldier to leave, then turned to Octavius and untied his helmet, dropping it under the stool. It couldn't be comfortable. The general looked vulnerable without his headgear. "And handsome," a small voice inside him said. Jed ignored it and had the urge to smooth the dark hair with silver at the temples. Octavius opened sleepy brown eyes. "Yeah, close enough," the cowboy replied. "How you feeling, Octi?" "A rattle." The Roman threw the cover off himself and launched out of bed. He stayed upright for a few seconds until the drug caught up with him and he fell into Jedadiah's waiting arms. "Will you quit? You need to lay down right now, compadre, and rest." "The miser bro never sleeps," Octavius slurred into his ear. "Yeah, well, you're gonna, even if I have to hog-tie you in bed," Jedadiah said as he adjusted his hold on his friend. Once again, brown eyes were aimed at blue. "That's hurtful." "Oh, for the love of... Rome never pouts either, octuplet," Jed said, and yet the Roman was definitely pouting at him. "Just lie down." "If you stay." "I ain't leaving you," Jedadiah replied as he gently put the Roman back in bed. Octavius tugged on his sleeve. "Come on, then." Jedadiah's blue eyes widened. "I ain't getting in bed with you, boy." "On the edge?" Jedadiah stared at his friend, rubbed his stubble in thought, then finally sat down gingerly, as if the bed might bite him. The rooms in Rome sure were stuffy and hot. He felt warm and was sure he was sweating. Pulling off a glove, Jed mopped his brow. "You're a good man," Octavius said, patting Jedadiah's arm. "Better than Somnus?" Octavius looked at him, confused. "You want to be compared to a god?" "Oh, a god, is he?" Octavius blinked. "Yes." "Then maybe he should be in here with you," the blonde said. "As tired as I am, you'll be in bed with us both soon." "What?" Jedadiah's voice was scandalized. "He's a god of sleep." Jedadiah's face was still bright red, and it took him a second. "Oh, he really is a god." Octavius gave him a doubtful look. "Did you get hit by a dart, too?" "No." "You jealous?" Octavius gave a wide, loopy grin. "No." "You jealous?" Octavius repeated with a nod. "I swear, Toga boy, I'm about ready to leave if you don't stop this daggone foolishness." "Don't. There's nothing to be ashamed of." Octavius put his hand back on Jedadiah's arm. "I recognize you, too." The cowboy stared at Octavius's hand on his arm, flush returning. "What?" "I've held you in high esteem since I've known you, Jedadiah." "We fought for 50 years before we were friends, Octi," the blonde countered. "I only fight the best and have the best for friends." "We can come back," a voice said. Jedadiah looked up and saw what he assumed was a Roman physician along with Dr. Benjamin W. Dudley, an American doctor of advanced age. The cowboy leapt off the bed. "No, come in. He passed out before, his limbs are numb, he's talking crazier than a road lizard, he's paler than a snake's belly, but he'll be fine, right?" The healers exchanged looks. "I'll have to look him over first, son," Doc Dudley said. The man was ancient but quite spry. "The man should be seen to before me. I know there were injuries," Octavius commanded. Quite the drama. You're getting looked at whether you want to or not, Jedadiah said threateningly. Legatus, we were both tending the men when Decimus found us. All major injuries were taken care of, so please, allow us to serve you. Octavius sighed and tried to move his hand in a permissive gesture, but it barely budged. Fine. General Jedadiah, if you could help him sit up, the Roman physician asked. I am Aulus Cornelius Celsus, my liege. Celsus for short. Jedadiah nodded, glad of some short form of the name, and helped Octavius into a sitting position. He had to stay partially behind him to keep him upright, so ended up sitting back down on the bed. The two physicians worked surprisingly well together, examining, then cleaning the Roman general's wound and giving Jed his bandana back. They listened to Octavius's chest and looked in his eyes, which took long enough that if his hurt friend hadn't been partly on top of him, Jedadiah would have been pacing. It was a tense interval, on Jedediah's end, before the doctors walked away to confer. Hey, now don't do that, dadgummit. Ock and I have been waiting long enough. And you give us a straight answer, old Jedediah's gonna get mad. You're fed with a rather the marsh, Octavius slurred before putting the side of his face against Jedediah's own. She whistles so nice. Tavy, I done been over this, you ain't a cat, Jed said to his friend, but he didn't push him away. That had nothing to do with how surprisingly pleasant the proximity felt, just the Roman was sick. Okay, healers, start talking pronto, or you'll get to see my bad side. You don't have one, Octavius murmured. Your face feels hot. I'll guess I'm sure it's heading to you. If it was possible for Jedadiah to blush more, he managed. No, Aki, I'm fine. I'm just warm. It was definitely stuffy in Rome. Strange how much warmer it was than the West. It was a poison dot, probably using curare, Dr. Dudley said. What? That brought all of Jedadiah's focus back to the healers. But no doubt thanks to our tentative peace talks, it was a diluted solution. Evidently, they weren't trying to kill. Legatus, you should be fine. Octavius gave a small nod, but Jedadiah was having none of it. Should be fine. That ain't good enough for me, compadre. Curare can make all of the muscles relax, including diaphragmatic muscles, Celsus said, but only in a large enough undiluted dose. What he means is it could make someone stop breathing, but shouldn't in Octavius's case, Dr. Dudley added. They weren't actively trying to kill him. Jedadiah suddenly felt like he was back in the hourglass, only this time it was full and he was buried in the sand, suffocating. All he heard was, it could make someone stop breathing. It shouldn't happen, General. He'll just need someone to stay with him at all times, make certain he's breathing steadily. I'll do it, Jedadiah replied. Celsus and Dr. Dudley exchanged glances. All right. If there's any change, I will remain close. I'll also prepare cold cloths to stimulate his humors, Celsus said. Ain't nothing funny about this, Jedadiah snapped. So I should watch his breathing. Anything else? Pay attention to his heartbeat as well, son, Dr. Dudley said. The art of medicine is conjectural, and such is the characteristic of a conjecture that though it answers more frequently, yet sometimes deceives, Celsus said. Jedediah's face must have said what he felt about that answer, because Dr. Dudley hurriedly added, He just means we're pretty sure General Octavius will be fine, but it's best to be cautious. He always talks like that. Jedediah's face was darkening. How long till he's better? Hard to say. The poison affects everyone differently. No more than 8 hours. 8 hours? And your medical opinions are just a wait and see? What kind of cotton-headed desert canary do you take me for? I could do a bloodletting, Celsus added. If that does not help the disorder, I could provoke vomiting by white hellebore, provided he's conscious. I agree, a bloodletting could be effective, particularly via the jugular. Jedadiah put the hand not holding up Octavius on one of his guns. Ain't nobody cutting Aki unless they want to get cut down themselves. He'd watched one of those True West documentaries about medicine once with Larry, and he knew bloodletting wasn't a good thing. Rest truly is the best thing, Dr. Dudley said after examining Jedediah's expression. The pistol might not shoot, but it would work as a blunt instrument. One of us will be outside, Celsus added. The doctors left. Don't be so dramatic, Jedediah. Like you're one to talk. Hang on, Octane, I gotta move you some, okay? Jedediah shifted, sitting back against the head of the thin bed. He eased Octavius down with him and kept his gloveless hand on the Roman's chest. He could feel how well he was breathing in his heartbeat. If I may perish, I need to tell you something, Octavius started. His heart began to beat faster under Jed's palm. Shut your mouth, you ain't dying, and don't get upset neither. Jedadiah said, trying not to panic at the faster heartbeat.
Don't tell me to shut up if you don't want me upset.
Are you pouting again? Jedadiah asked.
No. Just want to know.
Octavius exhaled softly, and his head tilted against his friend's as he passed out again. His heart rate slowed down to normal. You better not even think about dying, Octavius, or I'll die too, just so I can come kick your tail in the afterlife, you hear me? Jedediah's voice was fierce, but he held the Roman gently. You ain't going nowhere, partner. He'd make sure of it. It was going to be a long night. Chapter 3. Distress Deliciolum. Octavius was sleeping fitfully, which put Jedadiah on edge. The brunette shook his head as hard as the drug would let him, brow furrowed.
Will not leave you.
Jedadiah asked, then realized his friend was mumbling in his sleep. Octavius moved his head again, frowning, clearly upset. It's okay, Jedadiah said. He kept his one hand on Octavius's chest, ever vigilant, but used the other to gently rub the Roman's arm. Octavius stirred, his tired brown eyes meeting Jed's.
You're safe? Unharmed?
Why asking me? I ain't the one who ruined our triumphant snake fight by getting hit by a dart and going down like a three-legged steer.
I apologize for the inconvenience,
the general slurred.
If you have more pressing concerns, you may leave.
He sounded typically lofty, but also hurt. Dadgummit, out of it, Octavius was sensitive and sad enough to bring a tear to a glass eye. I didn't mean it that way, Octameter, Jed said. It's just, I didn't get hurt. I'm worried about you. You ain't got call to worry about me.
Are you in glass again?
Octavius said in a quiet voice.
Couldn't get through.
Jedadiah suddenly found it difficult to swallow, though he wasn't clear on the reason. I'm fine. You rode in on a squirrel with a giant one-man posse and saved me, remember?
I'll always rescue you, Jedadiah,
Octavius said, yawning. If I had my druthers, I'd rescue you next time, Jedadiah replied. But before you get hurt, daggone it.
That's nice.
Octavius turned his head to look at his friend.
You're close.
Yeah, sorry, Kemosabe. These beds are no bigger than moles on a chigger. Octavius slowly quirked one side of his mouth up.
I like it. I can see your vivid blue eyes. So pretty.
What? You're as crazy as a bullbat.
I'm cold.
With that, Octavius promptly moved closer, which was difficult considering they were already in close proximity. Jedadiah yelped as he basically moved the rest of the way on his lap. Octavius, you might have a hitch in your get-along, but the cowboy broke off as the Roman started snoring softly, head against his own. You can't go to sleep when I'm arguing with you. That ain't fair. The Roman general didn't stir, just continued to snore. His dark hair was extremely soft against Jed's cheek. Jedadiah sighed, then slowly pulled the wool cover over his friend in case he was still chilled. The cowboy certainly didn't need it. It was still too warm for him. He'd already tossed his hat under the bed next to Octavius's helmet and unbuttoned his top buttons. The blonde settled back as best he could. The bed had a small slant with a pillow at the end, but no headboard. Instead, Jed leaned against the wall awkwardly when his back needed a break. Clearly, it was only designed to lie down in. General Jedadiah? A familiar voice asked softly at the entrance to Octavius's bedroom. It's Decimus, sir. The Roman soldier walked in. His russet-brown skin was mottled with a large bruise on his arm, and his eye looked partially swollen shut. What happened to you? Jedadiah asked, wary of trouble. His hand on Octavius's chest tightened slightly. I made contact with Thomas of the Night. Literally. We have met before. Decimus cleared his throat. Your men are prepared for your absence. There were no significant injuries, and I've made certain there will be others dressed as both you and the legatus, so you won't be missed in the exhibits. Thanks, Jedadiah said. You met before, huh? Don't look like it was a good reunion. Tommy's one of the nicest... Decimus snorted loudly, then froze. Forgive me, sir. I don't generally exhibit blatant disregard for authority. Makes one of us, Jedadiah replied. You ain't so keen on Tommy, then. Decimus hesitated. I respect him, but he's been a thorn in my side since we came to life. Jedadiah smiled, glancing at Octavius, who was still snoozing with his head tipped against his own. Careful, that sounds like me and Aki. No, Thomas and I don't share the romance that you and Octavius clearly do. I actually don't find rivalry. Decimus stopped talking as soon as he looked at the cowboy's face. We ain't a couple, Jedadiah hissed. We're just real good friends. Decimus looked incredulous, but thumped his chest with his fist. As you say. The soldier didn't point out that Octavius was basically in Jedadiah's lap and sleeping on him while Jed's hand held his chest. Does anyone looks like that gummit? Jed was being annoyed as quietly as possible because he didn't want to wake his friend. We ain't cuddling, land's sakes. It's an emergency position. For his health. I'm certain that must be the case, sir. Octavius let out a soft sigh in his sleep and nuzzled Jedadiah's cheek. Jed felt the oncoming flush all the way up to his forehead. It is the case. I can't help Ox apparently as cuddly as a ringtail on moonshine when drugged. That don't make us a couple. No, sir. Quit sirring me, Decimus. I ain't your boss. Jedadiah really wished he had free hands to elucidate his points. Yes, sir. When you said you don't blatantly disregard authority, you meant you do it subversively, ain't that right? Decimus blinked, then smiled. Not so terribly often. You aren't upset? No, just quit smirking. Ain't nothing funny here. Jedadiah spat. It isn't funny, Decimus said with a kind look. It's nice. I don't know about that, Jed grumbled. It's just what you do for a partner. Indeed. I have duties to attend to, but I'll return to check on you both if I can, Decimus said. Better get that eye looked at, compadre. I hope Tommy's got a matching one. Decimus stiffened. He caught me unawares. Excuses, Jedadiah said, taking his turn to smirk. It was hard to be full of bravado with an armful of sleeping Octi, but he managed. Reckon you ain't prepared for the wildness of the West. Perhaps not, Decimus replied, amusement in his voice. But you are also unprepared for something, General Jedadiah. What's that? You're unprepared for the indisputable fact that you and the Legatus make an extremely cute couple. Cute? Jedadiah said before the rest registered. We ain't cute. Wait. Couple? Get out, Decimate, before I tie a knot in your toga. We ain't together. Rest well, the soldier said, grinning. Jedadiah threw the glove he'd taken off at Decimus, who dodged, chuckling as he left. You better leave. Jedadiah. Shush, Octavius murmured. He tried to move his non-darted arm and was unable. It faintly twitched. I think it's worse. What? You feel worse? The cowboy's mood did a 180 from annoyed to panicked. He flattened his hand down, but didn't notice a change in Octi's breathing or heart rate. His own were suddenly too quick, though. Just can't move either of my arms, Octavius started. Doc! Sisyphus, get in here pronto! Octavius sighed. It was fine before that. And it's Sisyphus. Sisyphus was Greek. Just hold on, partner. Help's coming. It better be. You ain't dying. I won't let you. It's okay, Octavius said. Don't worry. I'm reassuring you, Octi. Quit reassuring me, Jedadiah snapped. You're not too good at it. Octavius managed a teasing smile. Jedadiah had to laugh. I'm sorry. I'll do better, darling. Octavius's brown eyes were still able to move easily, and they widened. Did you call me? No, Jedadiah said, quickly. Yes, you did, the Roman breathed. All right, swoon. Dr. Dudley came in, huffing slightly as he hurried. I'm here. What's the matter? Nothing much, Octavius said at the same time. Jedadiah said, He's worse. All right, one at a time. Jedadiah, you talk, but taking a lungful first, son. You need to relax. He's worse. Can't move either arm. He's got one wheel down and the axle dragging. If he can't move his arm, maybe next he can't breathe. Octavius tipped his head against Jed's to console him. I'm not having trouble breathing. I'm fine for now, Jedadiah. Jedadiah took in a breath, trying to rein in the panic. You need to check him over, Doc. Dr. Dudley nodded and pulled out a stethoscope. I'll look him over, of course, but it's probably just the progression of the poison. I don't mean it's going to do anything worse, like interfere with his breathing. The cowboy nodded and moved his arm so that the doctor could examine Octavius. He didn't let him go, however. Jedadiah didn't think anything could make him do that. Chapter 4. flustered and fed up. Jedadiah was watching the doctor like Rexy watched his bone, with extreme focus as he tracked every movement. "You even think about bleeding him," Jedadiah started. "Shush, son. I'm about to listen," Dr. Dudley said. "What'd you say?" Jedadiah asked, incredulous someone other than Octavius was hushing him.
"He said you need to remain silent. That's when you don't vocalize,"
Octavius replied, sarcastically. "Hush your own mouth, the doc's looking you over," Jedadiah retorted. "If you both could button your lips, please. Take a deep breath, General, then let it out. Then again." Octavius inhaled, then exhaled as many times as the doctor commanded. "Excellent. Please breathe normally." Jedadiah was drumming his fingers. Part of him wanted to be up, moving while he waited. "Well?" Dr. Dudley shot Jedadiah a look. "Keep your horses in their traces. I'm not done." "Shh," Octavius said as the blonde opened his mouth to reply. "Your heart is fine, but your lungs sound a bit tighter than earlier." "They do?" Jedadiah asked, face falling. "I've been feeling him breathe." "It's something you'd have to listen to with a stethoscope, son. You've done a fine job with the tools you had." "I need a stethoscope," Jedadiah declared.
"You don't need a stethoscope,"
Octavius said. "Yeah-huh," Jedadiah replied.
"No,"
Octavius said. Dr. Dudley did his best to ignore the bickering duo, and instead moved the Roman's limbs carefully, then felt his abdomen through his red wool tunic. "Your diaphragm's tight. That's the muscle that helps you breathe." Dr. Dudley reached for Jedediah's hand and moved where he had it on Octavius. "You can check his heart and breathing here." "Whoa, Doc, don't grab me without warning," Jedediah said, but he was careful to adjust his hold. "Sorry," Dr. Dudley said, contrite but confused. "I didn't hurt you, did I?" "I don't much like being touched," Jedediah explained. The doctor looked at the Roman, then at the cowboy. Octavius's eyes had nearly closed again, and he was as relaxed as his body would let him get into Jedadiah. "You're curled up with someone closer than ticks on a coonhound, and you don't like touching?" Jedadiah felt his face flame back to life again. "It's for his health. Tarnation, I don't need to justify myself."
"I like a cuddle,"
Octavius mumbled.
"It's nice."
"Aki, you ain't helping," Jed said without any real rancor. The Roman was pretty adorable when drugged, and though he wouldn't admit it out loud, Jedadiah didn't mind the closeness. That had to be because Octavius was his best friend other than Will. Yep. Yes, sir. Even if he couldn't imagine allowing Will this close, it still had to be the friendship thing. "Sure, son, that's fine," Dr. Dudley said. "I don't care, boys, so long as you're happy." The cowboy grit his teeth at the implication. "You really think he'll be as fine as Boomtown silk?" "Chances are fair to middling, but keep an eye on him. If you need a break, no," Jedadiah said. "I got him." "I'd say you do," the elderly man said with a smile. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jedadiah gave the white-haired man a look. "I done told you, we're friends." "If he has issues getting his breath or his ticker stutters, holler." "I'm gonna need a stethoscope, Doc," Jedadiah said as seriously as he could. Octavius turned his head in his sleep and nuzzled the cowboy's neck, so Jed squeaked slightly as he continued. "Hey, hand it over, compadre." "Jedadiah," Dr. Dudley was the picture of kindly exasperation. "I'm keeping him alive and ain't nobody stopping me." The doctor looked at him, then went to his leather bag, pulling out a second stethoscope. He cleaned off the earpieces and handed it to the cowboy. "First listen to your own breathing, then compare it to his. Right now he's as wheezy as an overworked mule, but you only hear it with that." Jedadiah promptly put the stethoscope on backwards and it hurt his ear canal. Ow! He took it out, fiddled with it, then did his best to listen to his own breathing with Octavius on his chest. "Only check his if you worry the rhythm's slower," the doctor began. But Jedadiah was already contorting so that he was bent down enough behind Octavius the stethoscope could reach the brunette's chest. He put the instrument inside Oc's tunic, then stayed quiet, listening. Sure enough, the breathing had what sounded like a quiet, high-pitched whistle when the Roman breathed out. "The whistle?" Jed asked. "That's a wheeze. Indicates his lungs are a little stressed. Don't look so stricken, son. I'm hopeful the poison's progression won't go too far. If they'd wanted to kill, he'd have died right quick." "What the heck kind of thing is that to say?" "Just telling you the truth. You don't seem the kind to understand subtlety," Dr. Dudley replied. "You ain't the first to say so." The doctor laughed. "I believe it. Oh, I don't have but 2 stethoscopes. If you break that one, I'll call you out. Remember, holler if you need us." Dr. Dudley left. Jedadiah frowned, listening to the faint wheeze. It didn't get any worse. Finally, he took off the stethoscope and laid back against the wall, holding his sleeping friend. He wouldn't lose him. He refused.
"You called me darling,"
was the first thing Octavius said when he woke up. Jedediah stiffened slightly. "You got a fever now, Octy?"
"Do not imply I imagined it, Jedadiah,"
Octavius said.
"You said it was a nice stroll. I remember. It was sweet."
"Give me a break. I've been worried about you, partner. It was not sweet. I was flustered." Octavius turned his head to better face his friend.
"You're flustered now. You're flustered now. Jedadiah, if I'm worse, if my body's betrayed me, I need to say how I feel."
"I know you don't feel good, Octopus," Jedediah said, frowning. "I'm sorry." The Roman let out a dramatic sigh.
"Jedadiah, empires will rise and fall, and you'll still be obtuse."
"What do you mean?"
"I'm telling you, if you'll permit me."
Jedediah felt his nose and cheeks turn red for no reason at all. "Shoot."
"Jedadiah,
Rapid footsteps approached. "Octavius, I apologize it took me so long to get here, my liege, but I took command and—" "Oh, excuse me," the newcomer said, talking all the way through the bedroom and stopping at the niche and staring. "I've lost a bet, apparently. I'm sorry to intrude on a personal moment." Jedediah could only tolerate so much. "Dag nabbit, what's wrong with you Romans? Don't you ever knock?"
"Pavo, your timing remains poor. Jed, this is my second in command. Or he was."
"Tullus Fannius Pavo, General Jedadiah. I'm the best tribunus Laticlavius Octavius has ever had. And the only one." The man winked. "Call me Fannius or Pavo. I'm sure we'll be fast friends." The Roman's uniform was close to Octavius's with a plumed helmet, armor, sash, and taruges. The skirt. Jedadiah had seen him from afar when they were enemies, but not up close. "Reckon you know me, but you can just call me Jedadiah or Jed, not General." Pavo took off his helmet and exposed his face, tucking it under an arm. He was fairly young, which was surprising, with tawny skin, hazel eyes, and a long scar across his face. "It's a pleasure to meet our head ally. Octavius, I wanted—" The Roman general let out a soft snore. "He's asleep? I've never been that boring on report. Is he well? I was going to give him an update, but I really just wanted to check on him," Pavo said. The kid looked genuinely concerned, so Jedediah nodded. "He should be, so the doctors think, and I'm making sure he don't get any contrary notions. But he's all stove up and has too many cobwebs in the attic." Pavo blinked. "Meaning that he is ill and confused?" "That's what I said, Kimasabi." "I'll let him sleep in that case, but please let him know order has been restored to Rome and we will celebrate when he's healthy again." "All right." Jedediah gave him a nod. Pavo stayed there, sort of smiling at Jed and the general. "Yeah?" "I'm merely relieved. How long have you been together?" The young man's hazel eyes sparkled. "Did he confess, or did you?" "We are not together. I don't understand why y'all keep saying we are, dagnabbit." Pavo snorted. "You've got to be joking." "No, I am not. We ain't together. We ain't a couple." Jedediah was plain riled, so he forgot to keep his voice quiet. "Why would you even think that? You've got to be one bullet short of a box, I'll tell you. Next person says that, I'll jump on him like a duck on a June bug. We are not sparking." Octavius stirred against his shoulder, then said quietly,
"Wish we were."
"What?" Blue eyes widened. "This seems like a good time for you two to have a private moment. Legatus, feel better. It was memorable meeting you, Jedediah," Pavo said, saluted, and then left hurriedly. "Octavius?" Jed prompted, but the general was snoring again. "No, you can't say that and go to sleep. What in tarnation's wrong with you?" He didn't stir. The Roman probably didn't know what sparking meant, right?
"Wish we were."
Jedediah could hear the soft way the general said it. "Why was it so infernally hot in this goldarn diorama?" Chapter 5. Awakenings? Jedediah made sure Octavius was comfortably supported against his chest before he ran a free hand through his messy blonde hair. He didn't mind watching after his friend, but that was part of the problem. It felt natural. Right. holding Octavius. He felt like if he just held him always, everything would always be fine. He felt like home. And that was so very wrong. The brunette stirred and brushed his soft hair against Jed's cheek, and the cowboy felt his heart thud painfully. Dagnabbit, something ain't right. He wasn't right. Sighing, Jedadiah got the stethoscope and put it on, getting it into position. Somehow, hearing Octavius's heartbeat and checking on his breathing was soothing. The wheezing sounded the same, or a little better, and his heartbeat was as strong and dependable as Octavius himself. The wool blanket had 4 visible repairs. The bed had some kind of big cats on the top of posts. The edge of the rug, he could see, had 4 different colors showing. Jedadiah focused on Octavius's heartbeat and inane observations on anything but his deeper thoughts. Octavius stirred in his arms. Easy, Octy, Jedadiah said, removing the stethoscope and his other arm from around him.
Jedadiah?
The Roman asked.
Still here?
Yeah. How you feeling, compadre? Like you been rode hard and put up wet?
I don't know what it implies, Jedadiah, but
Octavius tightened his jaw, looking determined.
I have something I will say to you.
Jed felt the Roman struggle to sit up, so he carefully put his arm around his middle to stop him. Easy there, October.
We've always made an excellent team. The tales of our exploits will survive as long as the human voice itself,
Octavius said.
I reckon that's please. Let me finish,
Octavius said before taking a breath.
It's more than us being allies, or partners, or friends. Now the tablet's back, the sun may rise this day, but when our stars out, our night, it's lost forever.
Jedadiah said. Sure?
What I'm saying is, in the end, even Rome must yield before Venus,
the Roman declared. Not the planet. Octavius ignored the comment.
I love you, Jedadiah.
Well, yeah. You mean as a friend, right? You're my best friend too, Oct. The general made a strangled noise that Jed recognized. He knew he'd have been in danger of being hit or throttled if the Roman could properly move.
I love you. I'm in love with you. Why do you refuse to see it?
You're in love with me, Jedadiah repeated.
Yes, by all the gods.
Oh. The Roman said something else, but Jedadiah didn't catch it. He just sat there for a long time, stethoscope around his neck, holding his friend as he tried to decipher what in tarnation had just happened. At least your sense of humor ain't gone, Jedadiah tried, uncertainly.
I'm serious,
Octavius replied, voice incredibly weary.
I love you. Have forever.
The Roman gave a small sigh and passed out. Jedadiah was left holding him with wide blue eyes. He stayed there in the same position until the sun rose. Jedadiah woke up that night, arms full of Octavius, heart instantly heavy. There was no going back now. The horses had been let out of the barn door, and he had no idea what to do about it or how he felt. Octavius loved him? Octavius stirred as well, then flailed a little. What? Calm down, Octopus. Don't get riled up. It's just me, Jedadiah said, the worry over his friend overriding everything else.
Jedadiah, you're...
Octavius sat up slowly and turned to face Jed, rubbing his dark hair. Why are you in my bedroom? You can move? Let's shoot out the lights. That's great. Jedadiah stopped. Wait, you don't remember what happened? I'm afraid I'm feeling a little out of sorts this evening, Octavius said, confused. What should I remember? Right, well, just take a tater and wait before you get up. Doc! Celsus! Lay back down. Octavius winced. The only thing currently bothering me is a headache, Jedadiah, so please moderate the volume. Were we in a battle? Are you injured? The cowboy scooted over and tried to push Octavius backward, but the Roman resisted. Jedadiah, I'm fine. Just get your head down on that bed, Octam, or I'll make you lie down. Octavius looked at the blonde. You could do your best to try, he muttered, but he complied. So the Mayans and a snake were in your diorama. Jedadiah was prepared for Octavius lunging upright, and he kept his hands on his shoulders. Everyone's fine, calm down. Always the melodrama with you. Octavius stopped struggling. Wait, I remember the snake and working with you to restrain the creature, and then... He looked at his bandaged arm. Yeah, then you got darted and swooned into my arms while you promptly started acting like you were a few pickles short of a barrel. Saying you'd curl up on me like a cat, rubbing on my shoulder, and slurring worse than if you were snot-slang and drunk. I did what? Octavius's face had started to change color, and his expression was mixed embarrassment tinged with something else. Fear? Horror? You really don't remember? Jedadiah asked. No. What else did I say? Jedadiah paused. Octavius didn't remember that. He didn't remember. Everything could return to normal. Nothing had to change. He didn't have to think about what Octavius had said or how it made his chest feel tight and painful and light and free all at the same time. It made him panic. Dear Jupiter, was it that bad? Octavius asked. Jedadiah summoned a grin. I reckon so. You shot your mouth off so much I figured we'd eaten bullets for breakfast. Learned all kinds of things, too. For instance, I never knew you liked to cuddle. What? Octavius's face was turning from pink to nearly purple. Jedadiah laughed. I'll tell you about it after he's done. Aulus Cornelius Celsus had arrived. It turned out Octavius was fine, albeit embarrassed. Jedadiah filled him in on most of what happened. It wasn't unusual for a victim of poisoning to not remember the time they were ill, so the healer wasn't concerned. But he won't ever remember any of it? Jedadiah asked. It is possible, but I doubt it. Of course, nothing is for certain with this kind of a scenario, Celsus said. Reckon that's your answer for everything, Jedadiah retorted. Celsus made a small, dismissive sound. You wish for me to remember my embarrassment? Octavius asked. No, partner, Jedadiah said, adjusting his hat. I'm just glad you're all wool and a yard wide. Does that mean well? Yep. Octavius nodded. Apparently, I have you to thank for that, Jedadiah. You have my utmost gratitude. He hesitated. Chest bump? Jedadiah chest bumped the Roman, and then, without planning to, hugged him. Ain't nothing. It's what you do for a friend. Octavius hugged him back a long moment. I would do the same for you. They said their farewells, seeing as Octavius needed to go square things with his people. It was strange leaving. Jedadiah? Octavius called. The blonde turned back with an odd, hopeful feeling in his chest, but he wasn't sure what he was hoping for exactly. Tomorrow night, the museum is closed to the public. Shall we drive? Yeah, of course. See you tomorrow, Aki. Until we meet again, my friend. Jedadiah had never realized how large the Roman diorama was until he started walking away from Octavius, which was a fool thing to think. Everything could go back to the way it was, and that was absolutely fine. Better than fine. It was all sweetness and light, even if that meant no more feeling of utter belonging as he held Octavius. No more cuddling or neck nuzzles. No more sleeping Octavius against his cheek. No more soft brown hair against his face. That would all be gone. It should have made Jedadiah happier than a hog in mud. Yet his footsteps back to America were heavy somehow. Chapter 6. Got half. Peace was all well and good, but it was annoying as all get out when a fella wanted a fist fight. Jedadiah was in a horn-tossing mood, but there wasn't anyone to lock horns with. The saloon was calm and the dang mines were locked up again. If he was fighting, he wasn't thinking, and Jed didn't want to think. All he could ponder was brown eyes and comfort and their night that lasted forever and whatever kind of two-step his heart did on reflecting on them. He'd even canceled their drive by having a hastily scrawled note delivered to Octavius in Rome. Octavius didn't deserve that, but Jed had been, and remained, unable to face him, even if his arms had never felt so empty, which was just weird. Things could have gone back to normal, but Jedadiah wasn't back to normal. He didn't want to remember the way waking up tangled together with Octavius felt, like they fit, like one of the things his other self had been searching for in the wilderness he'd finally found. Daggone it, no. The blonde considered bending an elbow, but he tended to be an introspective drunk, so instead Jedadiah had started working on the railway. Pounding ties just wasn't as satisfying as hitting someone in the face, though. He was also doing his best to avoid Will, who definitely wanted to talk things out, and Jed didn't want to talk. Boss? Zhao Lei, his railway foreman, approached. Are you unsatisfied with our work? Jedadiah put down the spike maul, looking surprised. What? No, of course not. You corral this iron horse better than anyone, compadre. I'm happy to hear that. Then I must respectfully ask, why are you scaring away my workers? I'm a what? Jed set his spiking hammer down and turned to face the foreman. You showed up, kicked over buckets and cursed, then started striking each spike as if they offended your mother. Everyone's been avoiding you, the man said. Jedadiah looked around. Sure enough, he was alone. Oh. Did you have an argument with Octavius? What? No. Not everything in my life has to do with Octavius for Pete's sake. The fact that Lay was correct in that it did involve Occy only made Jed feel contrary enough to float upstream. Of course, boss, Lay said. Sorry. Just leave the railroad work to us, all right? Jedediah's indignation faded. He wasn't angry at Lay. He wasn't even angry at Octavius. He didn't know exactly who he was angry with or what. Rat, I reckon I can do that. Why are you upset? Lay asked. Jedadiah opened his mouth, but then heard gunshots in the distance. He tried not to dwell on just how happy he was for a distraction. 6 cowboys stood in a semicircle around a Roman with an oddly unconcerned body language. There was a hat on the ground, and one of the men had 2 smoking guns in the air. Jedadiah was scowling as he marched toward the scene. Ardia Decimus Blandus bent over to pick up the hat and handed over to the closest cowboy, who holstered his guns in response. I told y'all he owed me one, so leave it, Thomas Knight yelled, snatching his hat and putting it on his head. Though why you thought that was a good idea, Des, I'll never know. So it was 5 against 2. Decimus was covered in armor and taller than all of the cowboys, and Tommy was notoriously ornery if riled, so that was about a fair fight. Seeing as that was how you greeted me last time, Thomas, Decimus said calmly, I thought I would return your salutation in kind. You'll note I hit you from the front, so it was a friendly hello. Ain't my fault that helmet blinds you to what's coming from the side. Just what's going on? Jedadiah asked, strolling casually to stand next to the pair. Decimus turned and saluted, fist to chest, on seeing the leader of the Americans. General Jedadiah, I was looking for you. I merely ran into Thomas of the Night first. Des owed me a bit of a wallop, Tommy admitted. He was now sporting a bright red mark over one eye that would no doubt turn purple. But the crazy son of a gun did it in front of everyone and about got thrashed for it. I fired a few shots to tell him to lay off him. The skirt was beating on Tommy, one of the other cowboys cried. It's a tarugaze, not a skirt, Decimus said, calmly, still unfazed. He hadn't even unsheathed his sword. And a return punch does not count as a beating. Tommy, you said Decimus owed you? Yeah, he gave just what he got, the cowboy replied. We'd probably cheerfully punch each other more, but the guys got involved. I would not say I cheerfully punched you, Decimus started. Then you shouldn't have been grinning. I do not grin, Decimus replied. Right then, if you're square with Tommy, you promise you won't clean any more plows? Jedadiah asked. I will not cause mischief on my own, if that's what you mean, Decimus replied, though I will defend myself if necessary. Right. Break it up, boys. I need to talk to Decimus, Jedadiah said, a little worried. Was something wrong with Octavius? The group of cowboys headed off, though Thomas touched his hat at Decimus, who nodded back. Well? Jedadiah asked, crossing his arms, a little more annoyed than the situation warranted, and a little anxious, too. You missed car night, Decimus said in his serious, deep voice. What? Of everything, Jedadiah hadn't been expecting that. You had an appointment to drive with the legatus. What are you, his secretary? I'm a tesserarius, actually. It's very different. Thanks to your rescinded commitment, we have been training. Jedadiah looked at the soldier. Yeah? Only. We have only been training. That's why your axe is in a ditch? The blonde was incredulous. Decimus gave a small, rueful smile. Technically, I'm here to invite you, and all of America, to a feast tomorrow night. But you want me to tell Aki to lay off of you? That ain't my business. You are really remarkably imperceptive, Decimus said. He wiped sweat from his brow. He's going to kill us all at this rate. I doubt he's lower than a gopher hole over me. Must be something else. Decimus shook his head. General Jedadiah. Just Jedadiah. Jedadiah, you were with the legatus while he was poisoned. Did he truly not give you the impression he cared very deeply for you? Decimus raised a single black eyebrow. Jedadiah felt his cheeks flush. Might have done. And you're avoiding him in return. Perhaps you need to take your head out of that hat long enough to realize your feelings. Jedediah's mouth hung open slightly. What? Decimus wiped his face again, but this time he did it slowly, as if he also had a headache. Did whatever he said make you change your mind about him? How do you mean? Jedadiah asked. Do you wish to lose his friendship? No. Do you find him repulsive now? No. Do you wish to avoid him forever? Jedadiah crossed his arms. No, of course not. Then perhaps it is not what he feels for you that has you upset. Decimus explained. Jedadiah looked at him. It's what you feel for him. Thanks, Jedadiah said wryly. I've got enough sense to spit downwind, so I cotton what you meant. Honestly, when it comes to matters of the heart, I'm not sure either of you have a great deal of sense, Decimus said. Figure it out, preferably soon. Fortune and Venus favor the brave. You say that like it's easy. I can try and simplify it for you, Decimus said. How did it feel when you thought Octavius might die? Jedadiah frowned, thinking of that desperate fear, the scrambling for air, the way his entire universe had imploded. Awful. You enjoy Octavius's company? You feel like you can't live without him, but being with him and not holding him is difficult? Losing him would be losing part of yourself? You're aware of every second and every hour he isn't with you? That's love. If you blush when he's near and you enjoy his touch and you can't stop thinking about his lips, his eyes, it's romantic love. It sounded like Decimus was speaking from experience. Whether he was or not, it was the realization Jedadiah had been struggling with for the past 2 nights. He still flushed. By gum, you ain't got call to give me advice, Jed snapped. And even if that were true, it ain't that easy. We're men. Yes, I had noticed. There are stigmas in America? Yeah, I mean, it ain't bad like I hear it can be in places outside the museum, but, well, it ain't so weird in my world, especially since there ain't enough women, but you don't talk about it, and you sure don't flaunt it if you dance with a fella. There might be problems. Decimus sighed. Do you think Rome was without rules and strictures? Octavius literally changed the laws. Not everyone in Rome was pleased, but more were than were not. I certainly was. I'd assumed he wished to be with you openly, that you were together, but it was most likely a futile romantic gesture on his part that was doomed to go unnoticed. He did that? Wasn't it risky? Jedadiah asked. And you just imply I'm thicker than a wood plank. Decimus smiled. Yes, he did. Yes, it was risky. And when it comes to emotions, also yes. Now please, go tell my general you love him before all of Rome drops dead from exhaustion. I can't, Jedadiah said, starting to pace a little. Now I ain't admitting nothing, but even if I needed to tell a man I love him, I wouldn't know what to say. How about I love you? Decimus said wryly. Honestly, the simple way is often the best. Octavius ain't simple. He's a romantic. Lord, he was quoting poetry at me. Something about how the sun comes up, but our nights will last forever and all. I need that kind of pressure like a tomcat needs a trousseau. Decimus rubbed his short, dark beard. Jedadiah, you know how he feels. As long as you tell him that you feel the same, he will be happy. Please, try to relax. I am relaxed, Jedadiah said, clearly anything but. Fine as cream gravy. The battle has been won. He loves you as well. You merely need to announce victory. The soldier looked over at the pacing cowboy and sighed. I could teach you a poem? Jedadiah stopped pacing. Don't you tease old Jedadiah, he ain't in the mood. You mentioned Octavius quoted Catullus, so how about, if anyone should let me continually kiss your honey-sweet eyes, then I would kiss them up to 300,000 times and I could never be satisfied, not even if the crop of our kisses were greater than the ears of wheat at the harvest. Jedadiah's mouth flew open. How do you just know that? And I can't just start with crops of kisses. Land's sake, Decimus, that's putting the wagon in front of the horse. Fine, if you do not wish to learn it. Jedadiah was fishing inside his vest. Hang on, I know I got a pencil. He pulled out the nub of a pencil and a piece of paper that had seen better days. What? Say it again, slower. I probably won't use it, but I reckon it won't hurt to know some of Catawampus's poetry. Decimus gave him a look. You know it's Catullus. Jedadiah smirked. The Roman sighed, but he repeated the poem until Jedadiah had it written down. I know you're equal to the task. Good luck. Jedadiah nodded, but was too busy pacing to watch Decimus depart. The blonde kept pacing and occasionally muttering under his breath, squinting at his words, until he finally just kicked sand. Should he tell Oct? Jed might have been there minutes or hours, staring mindlessly at the sand. Not always a great idea. Not that he was bothered by it exactly, but ever since the hourglass, it stirred up memories. But Octavius had saved him. The moment he'd seen Octavius on the other side of the glass, even before the rescue, he'd been relieved. His had been the face Jedadiah wanted to see before he died, the one he needed to say goodbye to. He wanted Octavius with him, so he could tell him what he meant to him. Oh, blue blazes. Jedadiah had been in love with Octavius then, too. Maybe he'd always been a little in love with him. The blonde straightened, put the poem and pencil in his vest, pulled down his hat brim, and marched towards Rome. The Cowboys' conviction lasted all the way through Rome. Apparently the troops had finally been given a break. Jedadiah nodded at a few soldiers he recognized, and then waved at Pavo, who winked at him. Hey, Pavo, where's Octi? The legatus has retired to his rooms, possibly to change. I know I'm getting into a clean toga. Jedadiah muttered, Okay, thanks, before he kept walking. He was doing it. He was going to tell Octavius exactly how he felt. He was going to do it. The blonde remained steadfast in his courage until he reached the doorway of Octavius's bedroom. I can't... Jedadiah turned around abruptly, went down the hall a little ways, and just stared at a wall, scratching the back of his neck. It was a nice garden scene, although why there was a decapitated flying head he didn't know. Jedadiah took a deep breath, walked down the hall towards Octavius's bedroom again, then promptly fled. After doing the turnaround a third time, the cowboy felt ridiculous on top of being as nervous as a pregnant Jenny. There wasn't slack in his robe. He could go talk to Octavius. Except, maybe not. Eventually, Jed backed away and beelined directly into a hard metal breastplate. Ow. Decimus stood there with his arms still crossed in full armor, though without his helmet. Jedadiah. Why are you here? I was attempting to relax after training all day, but apparently, second to Octavius himself, I am now your keeper. One of the guards fetched me, saying you were acting suspicious. Luckily, you're on the legatus approved visitor list, or they'd have done worse. What is it? Don't get all head up about it. I was just thinking on talking to Ock, but something came up. Love is fraught with danger, but without danger, where would courage be? Go inside that room, cowboy, and talk to him. Quit hollering down the rain, Jedadiah said, looking nervously down the hall. Just 'cause a chicken has wings don't mean it can fly, or ought to try. Decimus tilted his chin. Coward. Jedadiah narrowed his blue eyes. I'm a lot of things, Decimus, but I ain't a coward. Prove it. Jedadiah marched down the hall into Octavius's bedroom, determined. Octavius! Ha! That would show Decimus, unless he'd done it on purpose to get Jedadiah to confront Octavius. Well, shit. That's an interesting greeting, Jedadiah, and precisely the thought I formed upon reading your prior missive, Octavius said as he walked out of the niche that held his bed. The Roman's helmet was off, and so was his armor. He was wearing a clean red tunic and frowning. Jedadiah couldn't help but notice that the breastplate hadn't really exaggerated the broadness of the Roman's chest. He'd seen Octi in the tunic before, when he was poisoned, but had been too worried to pay much attention. Missive? He asked, stupidly. Ain't comin', sorry, Oct, Octavius said, quoting the note Jed had sent. While I suppose I should have been gratified for a message of consolation and an apology, it left something to be desired. The cowboy stared a second. Oh, yeah, look, Octi, I'm sorry I stood you up, but I couldn't stand being around you just then. It was Octavius's turn to stare. Hold off, Octopus, that ain't what I meant. I'm sorry, okay? And I need to say a piece. I got something to tell you. How could you possibly surpass I couldn't stand being around you? The Roman asked dryly, but please, continue. Every single word he planned to say went out of Jedadiah's head. I wasn't sure I could act right around you. Normal. Anytime you're near, it's hard to breathe and my chest hurts and I kind of want to charge away from you like a half-broke horse, Jedadiah started. The more he talked, the thicker his accent became. Octavius was listening to him, seriously, hand on his chin. I've been scared to even think too deep ever since you confessed. Since I what? Octavius asked, alarmed. His brown eyes were wide. You said you loved me when you were darted, Jedadiah explained. What? Hold your horses, I ain't done yet. Oh. Jedadiah took a breath. You told me you were in love with me and I've been hollering down a well ever since, just caught up in my own loop. You see, Octagon, I didn't realize before, but I've been itching for something I wouldn't scratch for all along. You're the one who made me see it. I know I ain't doing this right. Do you even know what I'm trying to say? I would hate to infer incorrectly, Octavius said hesitantly. He still looked a little panicked. Are you apologizing? For feeling awkward because of what I said and avoiding me? I'm sorry if I... No! Like I said, I couldn't handle being with you. Not that close. Not in a car. Not then. I mean, I am sorry if I hurt you, but that's not what I'm trying to say. Jedadiah made eye contact briefly before he resumed pacing. Octavius watched quietly. Look, I ain't got grand sentiments, don't have pretty words. I tried to learn some, but I remember honey sweet eyes and kissing more than a wheat field, and yeah, I reckon that sounds as soft as a 2-minute egg, but it ain't me. I don't ever want to be without you, partner. I'd be more useless than my guns, and life would be empty and awful. I've never been as scared as when I thought you might bite the bullet. All I'm saying is, so long as I got a biscuit, Octavius, you got half. Octavius took a step forward. Jedadiah. Yeah? The cowboy asked, nervously watching him. What precisely are you saying? Jed gulped. I love you back. The Roman general was right in front of him. Thank the gods, mea vita! Jedadiah suddenly had him in his arms, or Octavius had him in his, and the cowboy didn't really care how it happened. He just didn't want to leave. Jedadiah's heart thudded loudly as they moved toward each other. He kissed Octavius softly at first, and then with more and more urgency, desperate and full of longing. The two of them clung to each other, and Jedadiah opened his eyes partly to look at Octavius's radiant face to make sure he wasn't dreaming. He felt the kiss like a surge of warmth that passed through him all the way down to his boots. Finally, he was home. He was whole. Jed's hat fell on the floor as he went for another scorching kiss, lips crushed together, followed by a sweeter, soft kiss, and another. I love you, Octavius murmured between kisses. Te amo. Yeah, me too, darling, Jedadiah replied as he pulled him closer. The Roman nuzzled Jedadiah's cheek and leaned his forehead against the cowboys as they caught their breath. Did you truly attempt to learn Catullus for me? No, Jedadiah said quickly. Then, maybe. Why? It ain't no big deal if I did, since it ain't pan out. It is a big deal to me, the Roman said, pressing feather-like kisses to Jedadiah's cheek. Thank you. Huh? He smiled, a large, slow smile. Want to see if we can out-kiss a wheat field? Octavius chuckled and slipped his arm around Jedadiah's neck, and Jed put his hand on Octavius's soft hair, and they resumed kissing. If there was an exclamation of praise Venus outside in the hallway, neither Jedadiah nor Octavius heard it.